Yakuza is known for a number of things, from captivating stories to satisfying combat, and obviously its particular brand of humor. But one of the most notable qualities stemming from this series would be a certain minigame introduced roughly 16 years ago. We're evidently talking about karaoke, a favorite pastime of almost every single Yakuza fan. If the popularity of Bakamitai wasn't indicative enough, the songs in this minigame can have an exceptional effect on people, and considering how we've all become accustomed to each new game granting us some auditory gold to enjoy, most of us would simply welcome any new addition to RGG's OST lineup with resounding praise. However, I think this particular minigame's universal acclaim is the result of more than just profound musical expression. A song being well written doesn't ensure immediate fanfare, after all. So, how come karaoke became this signature mainstay of Yakuza, regardless of the community's differing musical tastes? Well, that's what we'll try to answer today. So we might as well start off with the most obvious talking point in the debate, the music itself. While different eras of Yakuza games can easily be identified by different genre prevalence, for example, older Yakuza games focusing on industrial rock elements, and modern games focusing predominantly on electronic elements, the karaoke selection of this franchise has always come off as the product of truly eclectic tastes from the developers. Just looking at Yakuza 3, the first game to feature karaoke, the collection of pop-centric songs that were meant to be sung by the hostesses was also accompanied by an enka song that Kiryu would perform. This initially simplistic genre pool was soon expanded to include J-rock, with songs like Machine Gun Kiss, acoustic ballads with Pure Loving Kamurocho, and once Yakuza 0 took a deep dive into his signature 80s sound from a sonic perspective, the composers working on the series would effectively be allowed to creatively fire on every level. Genre alone would no longer be perceived as a limiting factor in approaching karaoke's design, because the diversity of sounds was gradually introduced, making any future experimentation feel like an integral part of Yakuza's musical identity. To be more precise with these examples, you really do have a little bit of everything present. You want a J-metal track to headbang to? Try Hell's 2. Care for a techno remix that would feel right at home in Club Deborah? Here's Shin Ichizu Samurai. You can also try Evanescence-style new metal with Like a Butterfly, holiday classics with Sayonara Silent Night, modernized surfer rock with Summertime Groove. Hell, if you just want to relax with some traditional instrumentation befitting the 1800s, Ishin as a whole is fully at your service. Now, while constructing one catchy song within a given genre is commendable, if one wants to offer dozens of them within a variety of genres and keep pushing further over the years, such an aspiration would require both dedicated musicians and a creative output that makes all of those different expressions feel like they form a cohesive whole. I'd like to think that the main reason why this goal was so universally accepted is intrinsically tied to the Yakuza games themselves, also feeling like a melting pot of various different genre philosophies. RGG always keeps adding additional nuance to their projects, keeping things fresh over time, so if there's anyone that could pull off this diverse palette approach, it would definitely be them. Going back to the musical side of things, while my personal preferences largely lie with heavier music, there's only ever been a handful of songs that didn't fully click with me in this minigame, which was exclusively a matter of stylistic preference, rather than a lesser quality of writing being on display, and even then, I've still gone back to listen to all of these songs upon finishing the completion requirements of a game. So, if you're wondering why us Yakuza fans keep hailing RGG's OSTs as some of the finest in modern gaming, but you don't have the time to go through an entire game's OST, then the karaoke selection can offer you a distilled essence of what makes Yakuza music so compelling. This brings us to our second talking point of the video, which would be the nature of karaoke's gameplay. While Yakuza does have a unique blend of beat-em-up elements, standard RPG elements, and even noticeable classic arcade influences, rhythm-based gameplay tends to be a bit of a hit or miss in games. Karaoke may be a minigame, but constructing it with the mentality of a full-on rhythm-based game, with input-intensive gameplay to boot, could quickly alienate much of your audience towards the activity. Just look at the community's consensus on some of the clinic songs in Lost Paradise, Otometaru My Life in Yakuza Kiwami, or Ichizu Samurai before the patch in Ishin Kiwami. It's easy to go overboard while designing a rhythm-based affair in a game that is not centered around it. On the other hand, make the inputs too simplistic, like for example in Kurohyou 1, and people will likely forget a karaoke song was present in your game to begin with. And if you think making something simple yet unforgiving at the same time is impossible, just look at the final song from Dragon God 3. Point being, there's an absurd amount of oddities present in rhythm-based gameplay where the slightest deviation from the perceived norm could result in chaos, intentionally or otherwise, and yet RGG nailed the ethos of their minigame from the get-go. Well, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, given that a number of people see the waterfall meditation from Kenzan to be the true beginnings of karaoke, which admittedly wasn't a seamless beginning. But even still, Yakuza 3 really ironed out any issues with that proto-blueprint to offer us a basis for karaoke that has remained truly consistent since its proper debut in 2009. Not only is there variety in how input-heavy a given song can be, with the games offering you either simple or lively interjections in the songs where you sing backup, but there's also a myriad of different tempos being explored within a given game's catalog. To add to this, with the exception of the song Hands introduced in Yakuza 6, the vast majority of karaoke tracks only last between 1.5 to 2 minutes, rather than playing the entirety of the song composed for the game, thus potentially overstaying their welcome. This means that the structure and gameplay philosophy of this minigame, instead, serves as the perfect way to unwind after a heavy narrative development, or perhaps a way to take a break from general trophy hunting. You just drop by Karaoke-con, sing a few tracks, and get back to business. And all of it feels just as seamless as getting into a random encounter would be. To cap the list off, with regards to this minigame's appeal, there's also the associated imagery, and by extension, the meme factor of the game to consider. We can be analytical and level-headed about the logic of the game design present all we want, but ultimately, even if you couldn't care less about the oddities we discussed thus far, you can still find absurd enjoyment in this activity based off the cinematics alone. At points, they're unexpectedly hilarious. Other times, they're heartbreaking, just like Yakuza itself. And unless you've joined the community fairly recently, meaning that you're well aware of the memes to have come from this activity, chances are that you'll have no idea what awaits you in a given song before the chorus hits. The best thing about all of this is that once the initial shock of all the aforementioned elements passes, whether it be the music, the inputs, or the cinematics, once you finally acknowledge the totality of the experience, is when you will realize just how special karaoke is. When you really look into it, this minigame has so much substance present, from the parallels between song lyrics and actual game events, to mechanical differences going from one engine to the next. Hell, in Infinite Well specifically, given that you have two protagonists who can do backup vocals, there are even noticeable input differences between singing a song in Ijincho or in Hawaii. In essence, this makes every new song feel like a puzzle for a die-hard fan, which I adore. And it feels like RGG themselves are having a blast with the activity as well. The only games post-Yakuza 3 to have omitted this minigame were the two Judgment games and Lost Paradise, though the latter did at least feature the aforementioned Clinic minigame. This would then mean that we've had roughly 16 games up to now that featured an ever-expanding catalog, and RGG isn't really showing signs of slowing down, as they even had their voice actors come on stage on numerous occasions to sing some of their signature karaoke songs. As we're nearing the release of Pirate Yakuza in particular, it looks as if even oddities like sea shanties could somehow make their way into this mammoth of an activity. And at this point, not only does that not surprise me, but it's a concept that I wholeheartedly welcome. Right now, karaoke is literally in my top 3 things I look forward to the most in a new Yakuza game, right up there with the combat and story. And while I realize a lot of this video felt like a no-brainer for people who are already singing every karaoke song word for word while replaying them in the newer releases, there's still a bunch of people out there who have never tried Yakuza themselves, or gotten to enjoy these karaoke classics. They may just see this community from the outside having a blast, and worry that becoming part of the fun could be too difficult this late in the franchise's lifespan. So I hope that anyone who happened upon this video will see the outpouring of positivity present and perhaps take the decisive step to finally try Karaoke and Yakuza for themselves. But if not, at least I got to gush about a favorite activity of mine in video form yet again. Either way, that would be it for this specific topic. If you'd like a more in-depth look on the specific karaoke tracks from Yakuza, I've done a tier list ranking all of the then available songs for the 4K subscriber special, so feel free to check that video out. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you again. So, until next time, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Cheers!